the deeper people-to-people connect. Let's play out a story and then come back to our guests. Celebrating the shared heritage and enduring bonds between India and Israel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi shared a memorable performance of the song I Love My India by a remarkable ensemble of Divyang artists bringing together Indian-origin Jews and Israeli citizens. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also witnessed a graceful presentation of Thiruvattira by members of the Keralam caregivers community, something that Shubhendu was speaking about. The performance reflected the greatness of Keralam's cultural traditions and the dedication of those who are passionate about it. Proud to see our diaspora preserving India's rich artistic heritage wherever they go, the Prime Minister said. And Ambassador Bhattacharya, if I can come to you, we are talking about people-to-people connect. And earlier you did mention how, involved people are in terms of these hackathons, and ultimately they are involved in trying to find solutions, really. They're all participating in the relationship in a sense. That's at least the next generation or the new generation which will take the relationship forward. To what extent, is this really going to be the future of any relationship that India has, the Diaspora Connect and really the people-to-people connect, taking the relationship forward?
Diaspora relations are always very important for a country, particularly if you can connect it to your development priorities, and so that they can become a vector in your overall game plan. And I think to some extent what we are being able to do is to achieve or reach that kind of connect with our diaspora overseas. And of course, in different parts of the world, our diaspora is of very different content. In Israel in particular, as the correspondent also mentioned, there is a historic diaspora and members of the Jewish community who are there, who become more integrated in that society. And therefore, they represent the best of both India and Israel in that particular manner. And then there are these temporary workers who go on a mobility plan to kind of work in caregivers or agriculture or construction sectors, and then they come back home, but they come back with a much higher level of income, as your correspondent also said, and working with a higher level of skill. And therefore, when they come back home, they bring back these better qualities and technologies, which they can hopefully then implement back in India. And then the third category, which is, I think, to my mind, the most critical, which is the young people, the mobility of students and scholars and researchers who work in what tomorrow is going to be. And I think this is the most exciting part of our exchanges with Israel in particular, because they add so much more value and they change the complexion of a partnership which is always optimistic, future-oriented, and looking for solutions. And they are the ones who are also much more empowered, and therefore the kind of command that they have, the respect that they have in the societies that they go to, and this is not just in Israel, but across the world, where our young people go as professionals, they then bring a new value and a new face of India, which then has a certain image of what India will be as we progress even further. So new pathways, mobility, are extremely important in our diaspora engagement. But what we need to be sure is to try and keep it aligned with our development priorities, while at the same time catering to the citizen aspirations that these people who are moving out wish to have.
Indeed. General Katosh, talking about citizens' aspirations and greater involvement of people in relationships between nations, we are in the age, where people are constantly getting information on the internet from various sources, social media, and now even through AI. And people are, of course, in terms of this particular relationship, even the popular narrative was of how effective Israel is as, let's say, its information network in terms of spies and Mossad, I beg your pardon, and things like that. So to what extent, are all these, this kind of a narrative more, is it reality, or is it something that people just probably talk about and they don't quite get what the real relationship would be?
Very frankly, I think there is within India there is a great deal of respect for the people of Israel, and it is primarily got something to do with the way they, after the genocide took place of the Jews, how they have rebuilt their country from 1948 onwards and have become today one of the leading technological nations in the world. That is one aspect. Secondly, I think Indians, by and large, and I've met quite a few people from Israel also, they share a similar view. We are very comfortable with each other. There is a degree of trust, a degree of comfort, perhaps because it is born of similar challenges. So the people-to-people connect, I feel, is one of the strongest aspects of our relationship today. Now, I don't think anybody in India thinks that the Israeli capabilities are hyped. I think those capabilities are very real, and they have been exhibited in real time in the conflicts which Israel has faced, either with the Hamas or later even what we saw their actions in against Iran and certain other places.
Right.
So they have been very, very focused intelligence-based operations, which has caused minimal collateral damage. Even in the operation with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, when they have to take out a building, they actually give advance notice a few minutes before so that the people vacate that building before it is taken out. In my view, I think it's a very, very high level of technology and a very high level of self-confidence that they will go after a target, but they will only eliminate the target and reduce the collateral damage to the very barest minimum. That is a lesson which I think perhaps most of the other countries can also learn from Israel.
Indeed. Shubhendu, I understand that you'll have to move on and, with your own reporting activities. So let me just ask you one final question. The Prime Minister's visit in 2017 was also historic, and this is the second visit after 9 years, again by Prime Minister Modi. So between the two visits, what kind of build-up has taken place, and how differently do Israelis look at India now?
You see, Mark, from 2017 to 2026 is a long period of time. The world has changed, the regions have changed, South Asia, of West Asia. There's been a pandemic, there's been Gaza conflict and ongoing conflicts around the world, putting pressures on supply chain. So in that sense, both India and Israel, close friends, strategic partners over these 9 years, have witnessed a changing world around them, and they've been consistent in their sort of bond, in their trust for one another. They've also now understand the advantage of standing by one another, especially in very critical areas of anti-terrorism, stand in partnership in innovation. They can very clearly observe that to find a reliable ally in world of today is such a challenge, where traditional allies turn south and the different kind of tariff diplomacies come into place. So in that sense, both leaders are coming from a context where the nations require stability, trusted partners to move ahead. Both these nations are at the cusp of significant next level of growth and development, and therefore these convergences, these partnerships, civilizational links that have been celebrated, it's time now to switch gears and take it to the next level. And therefore, all eyes on what comes out of that bilateral meet that Prime Minister Modi is set to have with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. Mark?
Thanks very much, Shubhendu, for joining us in this program. Ambassador Bhattacharya, if I could come to you, whenever we talk about a visit to Israel or, India-Israel relations, one also asks the question, India maintains strong relations with the Arab countries and with Iran. Many of these countries are opposed to Israel. So how does this work?
Well, I think if you look at the 2017 visit, the key difference that came about was that we were able to have this independent relationship with Israel and with the Palestinian entity. And so in a sense, it was not that they were dependent on each other. That particular realization had happened even earlier with the Arab states and Iran and our relations with Israel. I think in this particular instance, what is really something that we will watch out for is that how does it have an impact on the regional dynamics? Because what we do know is that the situation in the region of West Asia continues to be very fragile. And, there is the risk of war coming about at any point of time. And such disruptions affect not only stability, but also peace and prosperity. And it's only in situations of peace and prosperity and stability that relations can actually go ahead. So today, on the one hand, we will advance our bilateral relations with Israel. But at the same time, we have that equal confidence that we could be partners along with the others in West Asia, Arabs and Turks and Iranians, in trying to bring about a new compact. Because for us, a civilizational power like India, there is a different way of reaching these solutions. It's not that you wish away your terrorism problems or your problems of animosity among certain countries or people, but you have to deal with them in a slightly different format. And I think that is the realization that comes about. Our engagement with the key countries in the Gulf, with Saudi Emirates and even with Qatar to some extent, with the Arab world through the Arab League, through Egypt and others, has brought about an understanding where India is seen as not necessarily an interlocutor, but as a voice of reason and for diplomacy to play a due role. And there is a time when war must end and diplomacy must take over. And I think that's what we hope to see in West Asia.
General Katoch, also to what extent, does this visit enhance India's image, as a nation of strategic autonomy, unafraid, in fact, to chart a course of its own, as we are clearly seeing?
Well, I think this visit is very important. And as the ambassador said, we have dehyphenated our relationship.
Right.
So just because we are friendly with, say, Israel, doesn't mean that we are not looking after Palestinian interests. And the Prime Minister has made that very clear. We will look after both the interests. And the very fact that we have dehyphenated it makes us, in a sense, I think, a very important player. That means both parties can trust us. If you look at what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, it is one of the very surprising aspects that the Russians trust us and Ukraine also trusts India. So we have, in some sense, I think our foreign policy has maneuvered itself into a spot by which we are seen as the players who can be trusted.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to take a side, but we can be trusted to do what is right. And I think in international relations, that itself is a very important component of a nation. And as the ambassador said, we are a civilizational state. We have a stake. We have 1.4 billion people. So our voice counts. And because we are in a position to be, let us say, fair to both sides and maintain good relations with all sides, we have today good relations with the Arab world, which are far better than ever earlier than before. And we have excellent relations with Israel. We have great relations with Iran. So I think we have maneuvered it in a manner by which our credibility has been maintained. And
Right.
In my view, I think our foreign policy has been one of our greatest successes.
Indeed, and Ambassador Bhattacharya, in terms of the welcome that the Prime Minister has received, in terms of the number of honors that he has received, and one more by the Knesset yesterday, all this seems to highlight India's growing global stature. So, to what extent, then is what India is saying also resonating with, let's say, the global south or countries that feel similar to India?
But there is no question that India is not only an emerging power, the fourth largest economy globally, the fastest growing major economy, but also we are a voice of reason. We are also a voice of principles and values. And therefore, we are able to transcend beyond just an interest or transactional relationship. And this is exemplified in the kind of relations that we have with West Asia in a very, very deep manner. The ability to have good relations with Saudi Arabia and Iran at a time before their rapprochement had taken place, as a power that can engage with Israel and its entities that are inimical to its interests, is also something that India has. And the reason why this happens is that we consider this part as part of our extended neighborhood. And whenever there is a region that we consider as part of our neighborhood, there is a different connect that binds us to that region. And it's not just a simple transaction of energy or people or even of technologies, but it's the sentiment of people. It's also the civilizations that have brought us together, the values and principles that we've stood for millennia. And therefore, this kind of a power is becoming more obvious and understood in different parts of the world. When Prime Minister talks about this is not the age for war, he had, of course, mentioned this in the context of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, but this is something that applies to various scenarios across. So it applies equally to what was happening in Gaza. And if I may add, it applies equally to what is happening in China's periphery, where there may not be the use of force, but there is the threat of use of force. And therefore, these are things that we need to change our mindset about. And that India way, so to say, is gaining currency. And it will become more popular. We have already seen the Global South and the Voice of the Global South embrace parts of this. But everyone will obviously fashion it in their own way. But this is another way.
Indeed. General Katoch, so clearly the India way has a lot of soft power, but in terms of hard power as well, India is continuing to increase its strength. And we see that Israel, of course, in this collaboration, we were talking a little earlier about whether their capabilities are hyped or not in the common man's mind. To what extent, let's say, is there expertise in counterterrorism and cybersecurity to the benefit of India?
Well, I think any cooperation in the field of counterterrorism and in cyber will be beneficial to India. Not just with Israel, with any country. But Israel has got its own set of expertise. They have a particular set of challenges. India has a set of challenges. Incidentally, both these challenges are different. The threats they face, they do face threats, but the type of threats we face are different. But addressing those threats, the procedures by and large are the same. And in intelligence sharing, I think this becomes a very, very important facet as to how do we address certain issues, especially in terms of the tactics and the tactics and techniques which are being used by terrorists. The ones which are being used against Israel are ones which are also being used against us. So to that extent, a lot of cooperation when it takes place between India and Israel on the terrorism front. And we've had quite, in my own foundation, in India Foundation, we've had quite a few conferences on counterterrorism where the Israelis have contributed a great deal, as have other countries. So I think this is a very important facet, and it is one of the prongs of the relationship which will continue to go strong as the years go by.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, we are already looking to the future. India, of course, has a Viksit Bharat plan by 2047. And I mean, you did talk a little bit earlier also about, the AI summit and innovation, quantum computing and the like. So use innovation, AI, quantum computing, space technology. How does this strengthen the strategic partnership moving forward and India's goals for the future?
As I was mentioning earlier, our relationship is largely technology innovation oriented, and a lot of it can be factored, the various sectors can be factored in and viewed from that perspective. In fact, we actually view it from that perspective because this is the dictate of the world today, and this is how the future will be shaped. And in this, you need a very high level of trust between the two sides, which we have. It's, across the political spectrum. You saw the welcome that Prime Minister received in the Knesset last evening. It's across the sphere of business and industry. It's across the people. And I think the leaders personally share a very beautiful chemistry between themselves, which contributes to this particular understanding as well, because that leads to from trust to confidence. Are you confident that in a time of distress, this partner will come to your support? And I think there is that very clear understanding between both India and Israel that this is indeed the case. It is not a relationship of an alliance. It is a relationship which I think Netanyahu described yesterday as one between brothers, and he called Prime Minister a brother in the parliament yesterday.
Right, absolutely.
Indeed. Special relation.
Yes, General Katoch, you can comment on that. The speech at the Knesset yesterday. We did see, the opposition actually boycott Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech, but they all came back for Prime Minister Modi's speech. And that itself shows, the respect that they have for India. But, put that speech into context for the wider message that it's giving to the world.
I think the most important, there were many important facets to the speech, and I listened to the whole thing right from the beginning. Now, one thing came out very clearly is the very warm personal relationship between Prime Minister Modi and the Israeli Prime Minister, Prime Minister Netanyahu. That is a very warm friendship. But more importantly, I think it is the people to people, because like their polity is very, very divided. Like India's polity is also very divided, and we have the opposition walking out. They also walked out there for their Prime Minister, but they came back for our Prime Minister. Now that is because the people to people connect, I think, is very, very strong. The ability to trust each other, that the confidence which, if I'm talking to an Israeli, you're so comfortable with each other. I think that is that aspect of brother which the Israeli Prime Minister mentioned when he said, he's my brother. To a larger extent, I would put it that it is that brotherly relationship between the people of Israel and the people of India.